I'll call this regular council meeting of the Village of Graham to order at 7:35 p.m. With us for prayer is Shay. Thank you. The one thing I didn't check before we started tonight.
For such a beautiful day that we had. It's a blessing each day that we can get up and experience a new day. And Lord, I just want to pray over this meeting with the topics at hand and discussions that will happen. Lord, I pray that your spirit is present and evident in this room tonight, and each council member and the presentations that will happen. Lord, I just pray that you're here and you're working. And Lord, I pray your presence over our island. As tourist season is picking up, Lord, I pray for safety on our island as more people come and visit and experience the beauty of your creation, Lord. So, Holy Spirit, come have your way. We give you our evening and we give you this meeting. We pray this all in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Just a couple of things in opening remarks. First of all, I just want to say congratulations to the GMCS graduating class with graduation coming up in a couple of weeks. Also wish them a safe graduation. It's certainly a milestone for them. And we had another big milestone here on the island last month, and I want to give a shout out to Councillor Toll and Councillor Ballantyne. We had our first pickup of recycling, and it went relatively well, I understand. So it's a couple of bumps in the road, as one would expect, but it certainly is good to get that program up and running. So I thank them both for all their efforts on that one. So with that, I will move on to item number 4, which is disclosure of conflict of interest. And I'm going to disclose on 9.2. Is there anyone else? Hearing none, we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes of our regular meeting on May 5th.
I'd make a motion to adopt the minutes from the regular council meeting of May 5th.
Heard the motion from Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Boyd. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Okay, we're going to make a couple of changes to the agenda, so everybody get your pens out. 11.1, the Hole in the Wall Park, that is not happening tonight, so we're going to remove that from the agenda, as well as in closed session 19.1, the financial discussion, because that is changing based on some of the conversation that we had last week. So in its place, because we don't want to be bored, we'd like to add in closed session under financial the bursaries for graduation. There's a recommendation from the scholarship committee. Under 14.3, a news business, there is a draft letter to DTI which we will circulate. That happened Friday afternoon, which I'll talk about when we get there. And then I've got a couple of invoices to add for approval to pay and a transfer. So under 17.1 from the general operating fund, we have Island Home Hardware, the May statement. That is $8,205.72. Under the general capital fund for Urquhart Quality Homes for the airport, that is $252,996.76. And so then there's a corresponding motion at 18.2 to transfer from the airport line of credit to the general capital fund. Is that correct? Thanks. For $239,425.16.
Is that in addition to the, yes.
So, do you need me to go over that again? Are we good? And I got everything? Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to the additions that she read.
Heard the motion from Councillor Sturgeon. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Turner. Question? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. We don't have an RCMP report for this evening, so we are going to move on to old business, which is 9.1, the Regional Service Commission. I'm not going to belabor this because you all have copies of the reports from the last board meeting, and that's sort of what I wanted to talk about is we get those reports monthly. Is that something you are interested in continuing to receive with or without my notes on them, which I'll try to be more conscious of apparently when I bring them into to be copied? I did want to highlight the fact that we updated the committees, and that updated committee list is there as well. So those were the committees for economic development, community development. I knew I shouldn't do this off the top of my head. There's the landfill and tourism. That was the other one. So those meetings are hopefully going to happen quarterly, and we will update as we go. So without belaboring the reports, I know the things that I starred, a couple of them one was a question about whether we had to update our bylaws to adhere to the Canada Building Code 2020, but we're covered because the province has updated it. And the other one was highlighting the fact that the province is moving towards having organics separated from garbage by 2028. So that's something we've talked about, but it's something to be on the horizon just so everybody's aware of it. So anyway, so if you all are good with those reports, I'll continue to circulate them, maybe not formally on each agenda, but if there's anything that we need to talk about, I'll try to do it somewhat regularly. And if you have any questions about the reports, please sing out.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate the information from this person, so thank you.
Okay, with that, we're moving on to 9.2, which is the North Head Wharf project, and I'll try to clean up my little working area here for you.
Okay, item 9.2, North Head Wharf Project. Update CAO Chris Rayner.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. So before this was brought up last week, just to give a bit of a history on the project, on February the 5th, I reached out to Small Craft and Harbors looking for an update to see what they were expecting to do to resume construction. The email I received back was that they fully expected Greenfield to resume construction in the spring, which we have not seen yet. May 23rd, after they didn't show up in the spring, I followed up again with Small Craft and Harbors looking for an update. No response. On May 30th, I reached back out again asking for an update, in which they responded that they're in the middle of a storm water evaluation project, which I believe may be tied to the property across the road. But the engineer with Small Craft and Harbor was CC'd on the email, and they were supposed to give me more details, which they didn't before the meeting, so we'll wait and hear back to see what they have to say.
Any questions?
You.
Sorry.
Okay.
Councilor Rayner.
Yeah, I had a conversation with our MP, and he said he's getting stonewalled. Basically, he's not getting any information up there. He suggested that we write a letter to DFO, saying that, this project's been going on. It's detrimental to the community at this point, and we really want an update on what's going on and some reasonable expectation of when it would be done. And I think that sounds like a reasonable plan, and I'll make that a motion. We write a letter to DFO requesting that information.
We have a motion. Do we have a seconder? Yeah. Bullseye. Councilor Greenlaw will go with that. Okay. All in favor? Oh, any questions? I'm sorry. Jumping the gun. Any questions?
Not so much a question, but a statement. I was forwarded an email today from a concerned citizen who had reached out to our MP asking about the project, and I will read the response from our MP. It says, "Thank you for reaching out. Here's an update we received from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada Small Craft Harbors Program, May 27th, 2025. Fisheries and Oceans Canada are actively working with the relevant parties to ensure that the project can be completed as quickly as possible while ensuring fiscal responsibility and fulfillment of the contract requirements. Here's the part that I'm concerned about. As an impact resident, please raise concern about the project and any damage to your property with the Village of Grand Manan. Sincerely, Ishwara Primatunga, Office of John Williamson, Member of Parliament.
Wow. It was
Passing the
Friday, I
buck.
was talking to him, he never told me that.
We have reached out in multiple times. We were basically told that Crown land, none of our business, none of our bylaws apply. So if that's the case, then don't tell residents to contact the village office.
Any other questions?
Um,
Councillor Turner?
What is the stormwater evaluation or whatever? What does that involve? Do you know?
I don't know, because I was CC'd on an email. Just bear with me. So the response was, "Hi Chris, I've copied my colleague Kate, who is with Public Services and Procurement Canada, who will be able to provide you an update on the North Head Wharf project." And the subject on that is Notice of Storm Sewer Investigation.
Thank you.
That was June 2nd.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion. Do we have, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion's passed.
While I'm getting settled, just a reminder from the crew in the back about microphones. Okay. 9.3 is the Rural Plan update. So you'll remember at our last meeting, we referred the Rural Plan to the PAC for comment, and they had 30 days to respond. Their 30 days isn't up till later on in the week, but I attended the PAC meeting last Wednesday. There were a couple of other councillors who were both on the committee or who were there. And the PAC there is some concern from the PAC about the proposed changes to the rural plan. And so one of the suggestions was that we have a joint meeting with them and with council, so we are able to have, so it's not them sending us a letter, we're writing them back. So if we're all in the same room talking, I think we're better off sharing the information. And so they're still working on their formal letter, is my understanding, because they have a couple days to get it together. My suggestion would be, because once they have expressed their concerns in writing to council, if we go against their concerns, it has to be passed with a higher percentage of the vote. I think it's 2/3, but I'm not 100% sure on that percentage. And so before we get into a whole situation of getting their results, then we have to maybe try to have and getting into that whole confluence is going to be my made-up word for that. I just think it would be better if we had the conversation and then gave them some time after we have that meeting to then, if they still have those concerns, to articulate them, because maybe their concerns won't be the same after we all sit down and talk about it. And I think that way we're not wasting their time, we're not wasting our time, and it gives everybody a chance to be on the same page going forward. So if that is, so I'm looking for input from the group, I guess, to start with, and if there's a concern with that or there's support for that sort of approach, I would appreciate hearing about it. So questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Turner, you're up first.
Just wondering if we will be notified of the concerns prior to the meeting.
I believe they're getting a letter together, and we should have some of it beforehand, at least an outline of what some of that was.
Okay.
That, I think, is fair. Okay. Councillor Toll, since you're chairing that committee, and I feel like I'm stepping on your toes a little bit.
No, thank you for doing that. There is several things that we all have discussed and talked about, what we find is a little confusing or a little not maybe the way it should be worded. So it's important that we all get it together, and we'll do our best to get our letter to you as soon as we can, or with whatever timeline you give us, and then we can get together and talk about it.
I just think it's in the best interest of everyone if we have the best possible output before we go to first reading, and then we can go from there. So if that's okay with everybody, I've given Esme some dates. I think we're trying to come up with a date that kind of works for them and can fit into our schedule, because June is a little busy, but we'll come up with something and make it work. Councillor Boyd?
So I was one of those councillors that was at the meeting as well. And it did seem like there was just like, it wasn't just like a little bit, like there was a lot, and I'd have to say for the most part, I would agree with most of what was said at the PAC meeting. I do feel, and again, it's neither here nor there relevant at this time because we haven't done any readings, but I do think there is a fair amount of work to do. Now, we do have technically 2.5 years to comply with all the provinces' new goalposts that they keep adding and moving and adding and moving. But I do think it's important to get on it sooner than later, and really, we got to knuckle down and get something that works for everyone around their table as well as everyone around this table. Get it somewhere as close as we can before we take it to the public, for sure.
Okay. Anyone else? Sounds good. So that brings us to the 10-minute open session. Okay. So then, hearing nobody springing forward, we'll move on to 11.2, which is the fire department, and it's a presentation for the fire hall expansion project. And Swain is going to present for us.
I'm just gonna see if I can get our technology back up. It was there a minute ago.
We got our IT guy over here. He's already squinting.
I don't know if there's any magic password that needs to be entered. I got somebody on it though. Thank you. Yeah. Madam Mayor, respected council staff, thank you for letting me speak. I'm here on behalf of the Grand Manan Fire Department, and I have a little presentation to give you in support of a proposed project to expand the garage at the Grand Manan Fire Hall, in the hopes that council will consider the project during budget planning. I've got a little audio video, well, no video, just visual presentation for you. So, as I'm sure you're aware, we have a new fire engine arriving soon. We're grateful for that. It's currently being built here in New Brunswick. It's going to come with a tank capacity of 1,000 gallons of water and be able to pump just over 1,000 gallons per minute. We see it enabling a further, being able to expand our coverage in terms of if in the unfortunate event there's multiple incidents, we'll be able to better cover those. It'll improve our redundancy in case of equipment failures, and it will enable us to have two sort of complete attack and support engines, so we can attack, say, a large fire at two angles, and still have two vehicles available to supply water to the scene. So these are all things that we're really excited about. However, it comes with a bit of a problem because we are starting to run out of room in our garage. We have a short-term solution. Basically, we're going to make do with what we've got and park 3 of the apparatus at the back and the 2 primary vehicles near the garage so they can get out as quickly as possible. But in the eventuality that we need to get some of those other vehicles out, say a wildland fire or whatever, our response time may be slow because we're having to juggle these vehicles around a little bit to get them out the door. It also ties up some storage, a room that we were using currently to maintain equipment, and we also do a lot of hands-on training in the spaces around these vehicles, and that's going to eat up some of that capability. So, in the garage currently we have these 4 vehicles. I'll tell you a little bit about them. They all are essential still. We have engine 15 is built in 2015. It also pumps just over 1,000 gallons per minute and carries 1,000 gallons on its inboard tank. It's used as our primary attack and rescue apparatus, so it's usually the first due on a scene. It also carries the jaws of life and the hydraulic power plants that we need to operate those things. Engine 7, built in 2007, you're starting to see a pattern here. Same sort of specs in terms of its capacity and its ability to pump. It's our secondary attack vehicle usually, but it can be used in terms of coverage, so if another incident occurs, it'll usually get dispatched to it. And then it can also do what we call drafting and shuttling ops, which is the moving of water. Because we are a rural municipality, don't have access to the water mains and hydrants that other municipalities or cities have. We have to go to a location, collect the water, and bring it to the scene. And there's old 97, engine 97, built in 1997. It carries the most water of the fleet, 1,500 gallons, but it has a slightly weaker pump. We use it as what we call a water tender, so it's primarily going and collecting that water and bringing it back to the scene. And then there's the forestry truck, built in 1985. It'll pump 50 gallons per minute. It has a 1,000-gallon tank on it. We use it for wildland firefighting. It is actually the property of the Department of Natural Resources, and we're grateful to have it stationed here for our use. However, part of that agreement is that we have to keep it in a heated garage. And all these vehicles have water on board, and they cannot be exposed to cold temperatures without causing serious damage. So one of the other things that these vehicles need, well, except for the forestry truck, they have electrical connections and air connections that keep batteries topped up and air tanks topped up so that they're available at a moment's notice to be put into use. That's another reason why they need to be stored the way they are. Any questions so far? I don't know if it's, you get to ask questions? No, it's not like, you just holler. So that's, with the new one, that's 5 vehicles that can carry almost, well, 1,000, a little over 5,000 gallons of water. Seems like a lot of water. But in reality, we can burn up 1,000 gallons in quite a short order. for example, a single 1.5-inch hose line, like you see here in this photograph, these hand lines, pressurized at 75 pounds per square inch, can deliver 80 to 100 gallons per minute when used on a heavy firefighting. So that means a 1,000-gallon onboard water tank would be empty in 10 to 12 minutes of continuous use. And then if you add a second hose, you cut that working time in half. So you get to see that 1,000 gallons of water doesn't get us very far, and that we actually have to very quickly start. We can use that 1,000 gallons to begin attacking the fire as soon as that primary engine gets on scene. Then the water tender or whatever other vehicle is going to come and dump its water there. It gives us a little bit more time, but then we have to start rushing to go and collect some more water and bring it back in order to maintain this steady flow of water to the scene. An emerging threat that affects our impacts our water demand is electric vehicle fires. Studies have shown that the amount of water required to contain and control a thermal electric fire in an electric vehicle, or a fire in these high voltage batteries, can take up to 40 times the amount of water that's required for a conventional gasoline powered vehicle. So we're talking 30 to 40,000 gallons of water, or 30 or 40 truckloads of water. You can see in this photo, and this department actually built a dike around this particular electrical vehicle fire and filled it full of water in an attempt to submerge the battery and keep it to prevent what they call thermal runaway. So it takes vast amounts of water, and these vehicles are becoming more and more prevalent. So our demand for water on emergency scenes is high and may increase. As I said, in our rural community, our water sources are spread all over our area responsibility, and they require time and equipment to access. For example, in North Head, Grand Harbor, and Seal Cove, we've already placed 15,000-gallon tanks. These are available to us year-round, which is handy. They come with attachments already built into them, so we can simply drive up to them, connect our suction hoses to them, and begin bringing the water on board the truck. But they're finite sources. There's 15 loads in each tank, for example, in a large structure fire. It's not unknown to burn up, to use up a tank, one of those tanks completely, and then have to move on to a further source farther down the road. These other sources, once those tanks are unavailable or not close enough, we can use naturally fed sources. There's Millbrook in Castalia by the marsh. There's Long Pond is a place that we've often drafted water out of, and there's a number of others. We're investigating possibility of another source in the North Head region area. But those locations may or may not be available depending on the temperature, or whether they're frozen over, or whether if it's January, it may be a problem. If it's August, it might be a problem, depending on how much water is there. So we're always on the lookout. It takes quite a few steps actually, and some time to get that water, that 1,000 gallons of water out of the tank or brook and into the truck and down to the fire scene. So that water tender, the old 97, it would come to the scene, dump its water into a portable tank beside the attack engine, and then it would travel to the nearest water source that was available. It would have to take out some suction hose and use its pump to create a vacuum and lift that water up out of the brook or out of the tank and fill its onboard tank, disconnect from the pump, and then return to the scene and dump the water again. This operation can take upwards to 20 or 30 minutes. And that's when things go well. It can be delayed by the water source not, closest not being available, having to travel farther, freezing conditions of the equipment, poor road conditions, or equipment failures. So we cannot afford to, the point is that we can't really afford to give up any capacity to collect this water and bring it to the scene. We don't really, it's not like we can't just kick one of the old trucks out of the hall and make room for the new one. Unfortunately, we can't give up that capability. We shouldn't anyway. All right, so a longer-term solution is required, and we're recommending an addition to the extension to the existing fire hall. This is an artistic representation, I guess we'll call it. You can see this is the existing fire hall goes to about here, and we've craftily built on what we suggestion of what it might look like. We're hoping to extend the garage 35 feet out from the front of the building and have it expand the existing width of the building. We would need it to provide room for, we would like it to provide room for an additional full-size garage or two, and increase the height of the garage doors so that these larger vehicles could be stored in each one of them, the bays. It would provide increased room for water storage and catchment. We currently have, like I said, we have one 15,000-gallon tank buried in the ground underneath under this portion of the hall that we often use to refill our trucks with after an incident. And then we have a rain catchment system built into the roof that will collect some of the rainwater and funnel it down into that tank, help us maintain the level in it. Increasing the roof area would help us improve that water catchment and potentially give us room to add more capacity for storage. One of the other things that we would like to be able to do if we have enough height in the building is to create a vertical hose drying system. So this would be a system of ropes and pulleys in the peak of the building where we could hang the fire hoses and get them up off. Currently, we just stretch them out on the floor and let them dry there, and this would be a way to get them up off the ground and dry properly. And we see it creating the heated stores that we need for the current fleet, plus room to grow. So that's basically all that I have for the presentation. We understand that we had an estimate on construction costs, but it was a very rough thing, and then we realized that because of the role this building plays in post-disaster response, that there's other additional requirements that have to be met, and so those questions, I understand as recently as last council meeting, decisions were made to start collecting that information and about this project. But if that's it, I'll open it up to any questions or. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Boyd.
Do you have a ballpark swing?
Do we have a ballpark?
Like
No, we don't.
Okay.
Well, there was a number thrown around. I don't recall what it was, but it was before we realized that we have to build it to these specifications, and that wasn't considered. So it wouldn't be an accurate number anyway. It'd be out of the ballpark, I would say.
Anyone else? Councillor Turner?
On the artistic.
Yeah.
It has 4 bay doors. Is that 4 full bays? Like you could have 4 trucks?
Yeah,
4
that's a possibility. It would mean that we could have that, for example, that wildland fire truck in one of those bays. Currently, it's at the back of the hall, and we have to move some vehicles to get it out. If we had a setup like this, that truck could be readily accessible and reduce its response time. It doesn't move too fast, so we need as much time as we can.
If we get it to go, we're all set.
Anyone else?
Just a couple things. First of all, we've had some conversations around the table on replacing, or request to replace the DNR truck because of its age. Chief Brown said only one person can drive it. It's Russell, and you gotta drive it like you hate it.
I've heard, yeah. Yeah, it's got its characteristics, certainly. It's got a personality, let's put it that way.
Second one being, I actually have a meeting in the morning at 9 o'clock, which is the initial stages of getting the engineers and the architects together to start the design. So
Wonderful.
once we get that team together, the first thing they'll do is they'll come, they'll take pictures, they'll take all the specs, they'll talk to the team at the fire hall and start putting some numbers and some plans together.
Wonderful.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think, it's good we're moving forward with having those plans. The plans are the first step. I just want to say that cautiously because I think we're all cognizant of what the cost of that would be, but I think it's definitely on our to-do list.
Very
So,
good.
thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Okay, new business. 14.1 is heavy industrial properties, and there's a presentation in your handout. The City of St. John hosted a meeting in the middle of May that the clerk and I attended, basically talking about heavy industrial property tax. And obviously for St. John, that's a huge thing. Thanks, guys. Thank you. But it was in an effort for them to point out that there are a number of other municipalities across the province who would also benefit from municipalities being able to keep the full portion of the heavy industrial tax. You can see we're on the list as being the second to the lowest impact. For us, it's not a huge amount, but for some other communities, it's obviously very large. So their suggestion is that the entire property tax that is paid by the heavy industrial properties would stay with the municipality as opposed to the portion going to the province. So they're looking for support from municipalities. Personally, which I know I'm not supposed to have an opinion, but I'm going to give it to you anyway because I sat in on the call. The City of Moncton, I think, kind of summed up where I ended up, which was it would be nice to have, but it's not going to solve the fiscal issues of the municipality, which is I kind of think probably where we'd land if they're going to start giving out the heavy industrial property tax. Yeah, we'll take our 17,000, but it's not going to really be a huge thing on the budget overall. So that's sort of the background on the conversation. Did I miss anything, Esme? No. Okay. Questions or comments on this? Councillor Green?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Has there been any discussion, if the government gives with their left hand, they'll probably take with their right hand, the impact this might have to unconditional grants and other fundings they give us?
I think that that's kind of the underlying concern, especially given what we saw with the fiscal reform announcement earlier in the month, that it really, the impact isn't, we're not going to see much relief from it, I don't think, from what we've seen already. And so that would be my concern, is that if we say, yeah, we'll take the heavy industrial, then that's it, here's your 17,000, we've solved your problem, which that's not going to solve our problem. So I don't know if we want to support it with the caveat that this is a nice to have but not the be-all end-all, or what the wishes of the group are. Councillor Boyd.
To switch hats for a minute, on my role on the executive of the Union of Municipalities, we are supporting this cautiously for very much the same statements as you said. Is it here's some free money, but there goes the rest of your free money sort of deal. So it's something that we've been talking about for a while now, and again, cautiously optimistic, but I think we're still working on doing our homework with the fiscal reform piece as well. So,
And I think that was one of the points that the City of St. John had, was that because the heavy industrial involves obviously a lot of heavy equipment, heavy traffic, trucks, that sort of thing. The bulk of the damage is to the roads, which is the municipal responsibility, and they're the ones that are footing the bill but are not seeing the tax relief from that industry. So, I mean, I get for them why it's an issue. I mean, Fundy Shores obviously are very excited about this for some obvious reasons. So I don't know if we want to take a position on this or if we just want to watch it play out and see what happens. Thoughts, Councillor Turner, and then Councillor Sturgeon.
I think my only thought is that, depending on what happens in the future, you know, this could be a significant number. Like, we don't know what kind of developments there will be and that kind of thing. So I think it's just worth keeping in mind that, I mean, I don't think we should sneeze at 17,000, but it could be significantly more just depending on what happens. So I think we need to look at it not as a fixed figure, you know, and whether that will assist us or not, but I think we need to look at sort of the premise of the whole thing and decide on that basis whether we're behind it or not.
Councillor Sturgeon?
Yes, Madam Mayor, personally myself, I'll lean with you. I'd rather that we see what comes first before we get too excited about one thing or another.
All right, so with that, I'm kind of hearing that we're just going to let this roll for a little bit and see what happens and keep it in mind, and maybe as things go along, we'll bring it back to the table if there are developments. Is that fair? Yes. Okay. All right, 14.2, application for donation from Graham and Ann Minor Baseball. There were 4. And these were in the packages. There's the U9 Islanders, U11 Islanders, U12 House League, and the Rally Cap. Questions or comments on the applications? Councillor Boyd?
As it usually goes, I certainly have no trouble with giving money for kids doing stuff. So as long as our money lady on the corner there is good with the $800, then I would make a motion that we donate the money.
Heard the motion from Councillor Boyd, seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Question? Yes.
My only question or concern is we have that $200 spending cap for donations. And I find that in the last couple of years, this is just a creative way of getting around that. So I wonder, not taking anything away from the group, they're doing great things, there's a lot of kids involved, but I wonder if there's a bigger picture here that we need to review the amount of donation money that we're able to give to each individual organization.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. And maybe that is the something we can do coming into this budget year, is look at not only how much obviously we're putting in the line item for donations, but maybe also have a look at what our criteria is around that, what the dollar amount is. I've been here 13 years, and it's been $200 that entire time. So maybe, I think there's a lot of things, and I think we should have that conversation about what does make sense and what doesn't. And if I stall long enough, Esme's going to have this letter all handed out, and we'll be able to move on to 14.3. But I couldn't quite talk that long. So 14.3 is a letter to DTI. Rick Doucette reached out to me middle to late last week to sit down. He's doing some work with Coastal Transport on the next iteration of the ferry contract and was looking for a letter of support. He sat down with Chris and I Friday afternoon, I think it was, and we said it would be difficult as council to support one specific company, because whoever ends up operating the ferry, obviously, we're gonna have to work with them, and so it makes it really challenging to come out and say, you know, this is where we are. But that being said, we tried to, he had a letter of support, Chris took it and kind of tried to take those concerns and basically say that we are, why don't I just read the letter, and then it's just easier than me trying to summarize this. I see you laughing, Carrick. You keep that up, I'm going to make you read the letter. Dear Mr. Chasson, I am writing to express the importance of maintaining high-quality, reliable ferry services for Grand Manan and Whitehead Island. These routes are vital to the well-being of residents, travelers, and the broader regional economy, and any decisions regarding their operation should be guided by the principles of service continuity, safety, and community responsiveness. Over the years, ferry service on these routes has largely met the expectations of reliability and safety, demonstrating an understanding of local needs and challenges. Maintaining this level of service without unnecessary disruption is of paramount importance. Whether through existing arrangements or new considerations, what matters most is ensuring that operations remain steady, efficient, and responsive to the people who depend on them. The current system supports local employment and regional investment, and any transition in operators or approach must take these broader impacts into account. A formal RFP process should weigh not only the cost and competition, but also the potential consequences of change on service stability and community trust. Constructive engagement with local stakeholders, continued adaptability to evolving needs, and a focus on long-term value should remain at the forefront of any operational decision-making process. Thank you for considering these perspectives in the future of ferry service operations. Sincerely. So, looking for input or support for the letter. One of the stats that Rick had that was surprising, I guess, because it shouldn't be surprising, because anyway, but other than the trips that are canceled for weather, they are 99% on time, 98% on time, something like that?
99.6%.
99.6% on time.
And a
which-
99.4% trip completion.
So, it does speak to some of the service that we have, and I think anybody who's been to other islands, I'm thinking particularly Fogo and some of the more remote islands versus the smaller ferries that operate like to Deer Island or Whitehead, I think we're fortunate to have the ferry service that we do have, which we don't always appreciate because we have the best ferry service ever. Sorry, a little tongue in cheek. So I don't know if you guys are okay with this, if you think we should just not wade into it, but there it is, so open for comment. Councillor Turner.
I don't know, I seem to be vocal tonight, but I'm just wondering if it's worth mentioning, like where we have it supports local employment. It's also the piece that you need to have local employees available. Like, it's not just a matter of, it's great that it supports local employment, but it's also very important that they tap into, you know, the local human resources, because it's the only place you're gonna get them on this side. So I wondered if it was worth, you know, mentioning like the availability of crew for one of the vessels anyway has to be here, and the odds of another organization bringing in a crew and establishing them here is almost nil. So, you know, just sort of to round that out to, from supporting local employment to, you know, it's necessary
That
to
they-
hire locally because of these constrictions, so.
Good with that? Anyone else? Councillor Green? Did I see your hand? I thought I saw, oh.
Adjusting glasses.
Sorry, I was just out of the corner of my eye. I thought I saw a hand. So, not hearing much. Are we good with this? Not good with this? want to think about it more? Councillor Greenlaw?
I think it's good. I think it's not necessarily committing to anything, but it's just putting a blanket over some of the expectations that we have, so.
Oh, that's what I liked about it, is that going into whatever the process turns out to be, it's important to keep this community and our needs at the forefront of whatever that looks like. So, we good with this? Councillor Boyd?
Have you ran it past Paul?
I have not talked to Paul, but I understand that Rick was meeting with the minister this week, was sort of what the push was, and I can't remember what day this week he said it was, but I did say how much we enjoyed working with Paul and what a great asset he was to DTI and the ferry program, because he certainly has been an advocate for
Yes.
Graham and Ann and our ferry service. Okay, so unless I hear anybody say absolutely not, I'm going to assume you're okay with this letter and we're going to send it sometime this week. Fair? Okay. Sorry, I was away on the first boat this morning and I'm getting a little punch drunk, so. Oh, good. Moving on to approval to pay the following invoices. From the General Operating Fund. BSW Trailers, and that's for DTI, for $5,856.98. Dutchman Contracting for the ball fields for $8,050. Emerge, which is Beers Neal, for the gas tax 2023 audit, $6,152.50. Go-Go Group for Go-Go Gymnastics for $15,052.75. Griffin & Sons Construction for a dump truck rental for $3,105. Island Truck Repair for the transfer station dump trailer for $3,584.19. Michael Green Electric for the Seal Cove Bridge Lights, $4,597.90. Safety Source Fire for the fire department flow tests for $1,614.14. Sullivan Sales and Service for the transfer station dump truck for $2,201. And Island Home Hardware, the May statement for $8,205.72.
I'd make a motion to pay these invoices out of the general operating fund.
You heard the motion from Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Turner. Question? Councillor Boyd.
Did we rent a dump truck because the other dump truck was broken?
Yes.
Okay. I figured that was it, but thank you.
Councillor Green.
The BSW trailers for DTI, what's that one?
Hydraulic cylinders, sprockets, bearings, sander chain, stuff that Dory doesn't need till winter. He's just got it ordered. He's gonna go pick it up.
Okay, I thought that was something we're paying the provincial government DTI. No?
That goes on the monthly invoice that they pay 60% of. We pay it first and then they reimburse.
Anyone else? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. 17.2 from the General Capital Fund. Griffin & Sons Construction for the airport, $15,083.40. Lindsay Construction for progress claim number 8 for $119,865.67. And Urquhart Quality Homes for the airport for $252,996.76.
I'd make a motion to pay these invoices
You heard the
Out of-
motion from,
okay.
did you get?
out
You
of the
heard the
general
motion?
capital fund.
Perfect. You heard the motion from Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Question? Councillor Boyd.
How many more progress claims are there from Lindsay Construction, and is this the last invoice from Urquhart Quality Homes?
No.
No to both?
No to both. So, when we hired Lindsay to be our general contractor, we wanted to go local, but there was 2 individual companies that was not comfortable going through a contractor that they didn't know. Hence, the other 2 on the general capital fund to be paid. So everything else coming in, whether it's Michael Green Electric, Linton Plumbing, Dutchman, the rebar, the doors, everything else comes through Lindsay. So that's just not a bill from Lindsay for on-site management. That's actual bills coming through for material for the construction.
Councillor Green?
Can we get an update on that project as to where we are, how much we've spent to date, and what's left to do, and some projections so we can see just where we are?
Yep, that's phase 2 of my meeting tomorrow morning we've got a working spreadsheet that's got all that information on it, which Lindsay is updating as the invoices come in. So once we get a better idea of where we are, we'll circulate it.
It's here on this bill of what we've spent so far, on the Lindsay bill. Yep. Right up here. That's what we've paid before and where we are.
Is that in our notes, Lisa?
You don't have the bills, no, but I can show you.
I don't need it.
I can get you a copy for sure.
Does that include Griffin and all? That doesn't include all those other ones.
But the ones he mentioned, like the plumbing, things like that.
So the 583. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Transfers, 18-1 is a motion to transfer $108,697.82 from the airport line of credit to the general capital fund.
I'll make that motion.
Heard the motion from Councillor Greenlaw. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Toll. Question? All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. 18-2 is a motion to transfer $239,425.16 from the airport line of credit to the general capital fund. Heard the motion from Councillor Sturgeon. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Question? All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. So item number 19 is closed session financial. It's the bursary recommendation.
I'd make a motion to go into closed session.
Heard the motion from Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Toll. Question? All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Thank you. I'll recall this regular council meeting to order at 8:45. We were in closed session to talk about financial bursary recommendations.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendations of the bursary committee.
Heard the motion from Councillor Sturgeon. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Green. Question? All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion carried. Our next regular council meeting will be here at the Community Center at 7:30 on July 7th.
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody, and good night.